There's a kind of memory that never fades, not when decades pass, not when your life changes completely, not when everything else becomes a blur. And today, you'll discover the ancient system that turned ordinary moments into permanent anchors in the warrior's mind. Have you ever wondered how samurai remembered complex battle strategies without writing anything down? How they could recall hundreds of sword movements years after learning them? How they created memories so vivid that a single breath could transport them back to perfect mental clarity? The answer has nothing to do with natural talent. It has to do with something they called gishiki, the power of ritual. And when you understand how their system works, you realize that everything you've been taught about memory is incomplete. The samurai understood something about the human brain that modern neuroscience only discovered recently. Memories aren't stored in isolation. They're anchored to sensory experiences, physical movements, and emotional states. And that's precisely why their ritual system creates memories that last a lifetime when everything else fades. But it comes at a price. This path requires you to understand that memory isn't about trying to remember. It's about creating anchors so powerful that forgetting becomes impossible. Before I show you how this system works in practice, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss future content. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to the video. Let me tell you a story. Feudal Japan, Kyoto Province, 1580. There was a young samurai named Takeshi, 19 years old, who had a problem that terrified him. He couldn't remember what his master taught him. His teacher would demonstrate a sword kata, 47 precise movements, each one critical for survival. Takeshi would watch carefully, nod attentively, practice for hours. But 2 days later, half the sequence was gone. His mind was like water, his master would say with disappointment. It holds everything for a moment, then lets it flow away. Takeshi wasn't unintelligent. He could read classical texts, understand strategy, speak eloquently about Bushido philosophy. But when it came to remembering physical techniques, battle strategies, or the precise details that separate life from death in combat, his mind betrayed him. He tried everything. He repeated movements until his arms ached. He stayed up late visualizing sequences. He wrote descriptions in his journal, but words couldn't capture the feel of a proper stance or the exact timing of a counterattack. The other students didn't have this problem. They learned a kata once and owned it forever. Meanwhile, Takeshi was always one step behind, always asking for another demonstration, always the last to master anything. It was humiliating. But what made it worse was the fear. In battle, you don't get a second chance to remember. If a technique slips from your mind at the wrong moment, you die. Simple as that. And Takeshi knew with absolute certainty that his faulty memory would get him killed. Everything changed when his master assigned him to an old warrior named Sasaki for specialized training. Sasaki was 68 years old, too old to fight anymore, but his mind was sharp as ever. People said he could recall every duel he'd ever fought, every student he'd ever taught, every lesson he'd ever learned. Takeshi, the master said, will learn from Sasaki-sensei how warriors remember. Takeshi expected more repetition, harder practice, longer hours. Instead, Sasaki taught him something completely different. The first lesson wasn't about swords at all. Young Takeshi, Sasaki said, before you can remember technique, you must learn how warriors create memories that cannot be erased. Tell me, when you practice a kata, what do you think about? The movements, sensei. The steps, the strikes, the sequence. That is your problem. You are trying to remember with your mind, but the mind is a weak vessel, it leaks. Warriors remember with their entire being. Sasaki explained something that sounded like mysticism, but was actually profound psychology. Every morning before training, samurai performed Mokuso, pre-battle meditation, not to relax, not to find peace, but to create a specific mental state that would anchor every lesson that followed. When you sit in Mokuso, Sasaki taught, you're not just clearing your mind, you're creating a mental stamp, a unique signature of consciousness. Everything you learn in that state becomes bound to it. Later, when you return to that same state through the same ritual, every memory floods back. Takeshi was skeptical but desperate. That first morning, Sasaki had him sit in formal seiza position. Hands on thighs, spine straight, eyes half closed. 3 deep breaths, 4 counts in, hold for 2, 6 counts out. Not just any breathing, but a specific pattern that triggered a specific neurological state. Then, complete stillness for 10 minutes. No moving, no shifting, just presence. At first, Takeshi's mind wandered everywhere. Thoughts about breakfast, worries about training, memories of yesterday's failures. But Sasaki was patient. Each time your mind wanders, simply notice it and return to your breath. Don't fight your thoughts, just return again and again. After 2 weeks of daily Mokuso, something shifted. Takeshi began to recognize a specific feeling, a mental clarity that only appeared in that ritual state. It was like the difference between looking through muddy water and crystal clear glass. Then Sasaki introduced the second element of the system. After Mokuso, before any physical training, Takeshi had to perform a karma ritual. Not karma as in cosmic justice, but karma as in creative action, a daily practice that combined sensory experience with focused intention. Sasaki gave him a choice of 3 rituals. First, haiku, compose a 3-line poem that captured something about the present moment, specifically including a reference to the season. Second, sumi, create a simple ink painting of something from nature. Third, keisansui, arrange patterns in a small pebble garden using a wooden rake. These weren't decorations or entertainment, they were memory anchors. Here's what Sasaki understood that modern people don't. When you create something with your hands while in a specific mental state, you're doing something powerful. You're binding that mental state to a physical action, to sensory details, to a moment in time. Later, even years later, you can return to that type of creation and instantly access that same mental state, along with everything you learned in it. Takeshi chose haiku because he'd always enjoyed words. Every morning after Mokuso, before sword practice, he would compose a poem. Not elaborate verses, just 3 simple lines. Cherry blossoms falling, soft on the morning ground, spring's gentle goodbye. The act of noticing the world, finding words, writing them down, this created a sensory anchor. The texture of paper, the smell of ink, the sight of falling petals, all of it became bound together. Then came the sword training. But now everything was different, because Takeshi wasn't just learning movements. He was learning them in a specific state of consciousness, after a specific ritual, with specific sensory anchors attached. The result was remarkable. After just 1 week, he could recall entire kata sequences that had eluded him for months. Why? Because he wasn't trying to remember abstract movements. He was accessing a complete sensory-emotional physical state that had those movements embedded within it. Modern neuroscience has a name for this. They call it state-dependent learning. Information learned in a particular psychological or physiological state is most easily recalled in that same state. But the samurai didn't need scientific terminology. They just knew, through centuries of refined practice, that ritual creates the perfect conditions for permanent memory. Sasaki taught Takeshi another crucial principle. Memory isn't created by trying to remember. It's created by full presence during learning. Think about it. When you're distracted, rushing, or thinking about other things while learning, you're essentially trying to write on wet paper. The information never sets. But when you're in a state of complete presence, when every sense is engaged, when your body, mind, and spirit are unified, that's when memories become permanent. This is why samurai rituals always engaged multiple senses simultaneously. The Mokuso meditation involved specific posture, seiza position, which created a unique physical sensation. The breathing pattern had a specific rhythm that you could feel in your body. The karma rituals added visual elements, painting, tactile elements, arranging pebbles, and creative elements, composing poetry. Each sense became another anchor point, another pathway back to the memory. 3 months into this training, Takeshi experienced something extraordinary. He was practicing a new kata, 63 movements, one of the most complex forms in his school. His master demonstrated it once, just once. Takeshi performed his morning ritual, Mokuso, followed by haiku, exactly as trained. Then he attempted the kata, and he executed it perfectly, not approximately, not mostly correct, perfectly. His master stood silent for a long moment. You have learned what many never discover. You have learned that the warrior's true weapon is not the sword, it's the mind that forgets nothing. But there was more to the system. Sasaki taught Takeshi that rituals don't just create memories, they create recall triggers. This is where the system becomes almost magical in its effectiveness. Every time Takeshi sat in Mokuso, he wasn't just calming his mind. He was pulling a thread that connected to hundreds of previous training sessions. The specific breathing pattern, the exact posture, the mental state, all of it acted like a key unlocking a door. Behind that door was everything he'd ever learned in that state. Think about how powerful this is. Imagine you're about to enter combat. Your heart is racing, fear is rising, your mind could easily blank out, but you've trained for this moment. You take 3 breaths, 4 in, 2 hold, 6 out. You adjust your posture to the exact position you've practiced thousands of times. And suddenly, instantly, everything you've ever trained floods back. Not as abstract memory, but as physical readiness. Your body knows every response, your mind sees every option, your spirit is calm because this state is familiar. This is what modern athletes call being in the zone, what psychologists call flow state, what musicians call being one with the instrument. The samurai didn't have fancy terms for it. They just knew that proper ritual creates instant access to peak performance and perfect recall. But here's something crucial that most people miss. The ritual itself must never vary. This is where modern people go wrong. They think variety keeps things interesting. They change their routine, mix things up, try different approaches. The samurai knew better. If your ritual changes, your anchor moves. If your anchor moves, your recall weakens. This is why Takeshi performed the exact same Mokuso, the exact same breathing pattern, the exact same posture, every single day for the rest of his life. Not because he was rigid or uncreative, because he understood that ritual is the price of perfect memory. 5 years after beginning this training, Takeshi had become one of the finest swordsmen in his province. But what impressed people wasn't his technique, it was his memory. Elders would ask him about kata they'd learned 40 years ago, forms they'd half forgotten. Takeshi could demonstrate them perfectly because he'd learned them in that ritual state, and in that state, nothing was ever lost. Other samurai started seeking him out, asking how he remembered everything. He tried to explain about Mokuso and karma rituals, about state-dependent learning and sensory anchors. Most didn't understand. They wanted a trick, a shortcut, something quick. They didn't want to hear that perfect memory requires perfect discipline, that you must perform the same ritual every single day, that you cannot skip steps or take shortcuts, that the system only works if you respect its structure completely. But for those few who committed fully, who performed Mokuso every morning without fail, who created their karma rituals with total presence, who trained in that specific state until it became second nature, the results were identical. To Takeshi's unforgettable memories, instant recall, complete mastery. One day, a curious student asked Takeshi a profound question. "Sensei, if we remember everything we learn in the ritual state, what happens to memories created outside that state? Do we lose them?" Takeshi smiled. "That, young one, is precisely the point. The ritual doesn't make you remember everything, it makes you remember what matters. Think about your daily life. You experience thousands of moments, but most are forgettable. The samurai warrior cannot afford to clutter his mind with forgettable moments. He must remember only what is essential for survival, for mastery, for his duty. By learning only in the ritual state, by making that state the gateway to all important knowledge, warriors automatically filter out the noise. Everything crucial is preserved. Everything trivial is allowed to fade. This is not a weakness. This is perfect efficiency. Modern memory champions use a similar principle. They don't try to remember everything. They create memory palaces, elaborate mental structures where they store only chosen information. The samurai method is even more elegant. The ritual itself becomes your palace, and the entrance is accessed through specific physical and mental actions you can perform anywhere, anytime. There's a beautiful story told about a master swordsman who was captured by enemies. They bound his hands and threw him in a dark cell, trying to break his spirit before execution. But every morning at dawn, he sat in perfect seiza position, performed his breathing ritual, composed haiku in his mind, and mentally practiced every kata he'd ever learned. When he was finally released 60 days later, the first thing he did was request a practice session. He executed every kata flawlessly, as if he'd trained every day. His captors had bound his body, but they couldn't touch his mind, because his memory wasn't stored in his muscles. It was stored in a mental state he could access through ritual, chains, or no chains. This is the true power of the samurai memory system. It makes you independent of external conditions. You don't need your training hall. You don't need your equipment. You don't need perfect circumstances. You need only the ability to enter the ritual state, and everything you've ever learned in that state is instantly available. A researcher at Tokyo University studying traditional martial arts made a fascinating discovery. When they measured the brain activity of advanced practitioners during Mokuso, they found something remarkable. The meditation created a unique pattern of neural activation that became a neurological signature. Everything learned immediately after this pattern appeared became associated with it at the synaptic level. Later, when practitioners returned to Mokuso, that same neural pattern would reactivate, and with it, instant access to all associated memories. The samurai had discovered, through pure empirical observation, what neuroscience would later prove. Rituals create neurological states, and states are the most powerful memory triggers that exist. So here's what you need to understand. The samurai memory system isn't about having a better brain, it's about having a better system. Anyone can use it. You don't need to be a warrior, you don't need special abilities, you just need to commit to the method. Choose your ritual. For samurai, it was Mokuso plus a karma practice. For you, it could be 5 minutes of specific breathing plus journaling, or meditation plus sketching, or yoga plus reading poetry. The specific activities matter less than the structure. It must be the same sequence every time, performed in the same order, creating the same mental state. Learn only in that state. This is crucial. If you want to master something, if you want it to become unforgettable, learn it during or immediately after your ritual. Not while watching TV, not while distracted, not while doing 10 other things. Only in the ritual state. Trust the system. It will feel strange at first. You might not notice results immediately, but the samurai didn't learn this method overnight. They refined it over centuries. And everyone who commits fully discovers the same truth. Ritual doesn't just help you remember, it makes forgetting impossible. Takeshi trained students for 40 years. On his last day of teaching, when he was 68 years old, a young samurai asked him, "Sensei, what is the most important lesson you can teach me about memory?" Takeshi thought for a long moment. Then he said, "Memory is not about the past, it's about presence. When you are fully present during learning, you don't have to try to remember. The experience inscribes itself, and ritual is the tool that guarantees presence. That is the secret every warrior must learn." These were his final words as a teacher, and they contain the entire system in one thought. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Stop trying to remember. Start creating the conditions where remembering happens automatically. The samurai discovered those conditions 400 years ago. They still work today. They will still work 400 years from now. Because they're based on how the human brain actually functions, not on tricks or gimmicks or shortcuts. If you're ready to create unforgettable memories, here's your path. Design your ritual. Choose simple elements that engage multiple senses. Perform it exactly the same way every day. Learn important material only after completing the ritual. Trust the process even when it feels awkward. Give it 90 days of perfect consistency. After 90 days, you won't need faith, you'll have proof, because you'll find yourself recalling things instantly that others struggle to remember, not because you tried harder, because you used a better system. If this video changed your perspective on memory and learning, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss the next content. And tell me in the comments, what ritual will you create to anchor your most important memories? Remember, the warrior who masters memory masters life itself. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for your attention. Until the next video.